Hey y'all, welcome to Geeking Out, the podcast about all geeky aspects of software delivery, DevOps, observability, reliability, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adriana Villela, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. And geeking out with me today is Tim Banks. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, how's it going, Adriana?
Good, good. And where are you calling from today, Tim?
I am calling from the balmy summer capital of Austin, Texas, where it's been over 100 degrees for 40 some odd days straight.
Wow, that is very hot. I am definitely like a tropical gal, but I don't know if I could do 40 degrees or over 100 degrees, which I guess is like 40 degrees Celsius for
Something.
that many days straight.
It's a
Ouchie.
lot. It's a lot.
Ouch. Well, stay cool. I
Yeah,
hope.
literally right off camera, I've got my Govee stick fan. Like literally, like I'm
Oh,
touching it
good.
right now, so I have it strategically positioned.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing like a good fan to help you cool off. Yeah. I
Oh, it's
have one in
great.
my office in the summer because it gets like so hot.
Yeah, I face the window, which is great for the lighting, but also then it gets like hot in here. So I'm like,
I know,
yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah. Yeah. I have the same problem. All right. Well, let's get started with some lightning round questions.
sure,
All right. I
sure.
swear they won't hurt. Okay. Question number one. Are you a lefty or a righty?
I'm left-handed, but
Yay.
because but my dad taught me how to do like most sports things, so I throw right-handed.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's funny. There's like certain things where I think I'm a lefty as well, but I do certain things right-handed. Like I could not even fathom using a mouse left-handed. Like that just feels super weird to me.
yeah, yeah,
But I know some left-handed people who are like, yeah, I mouse
yeah,
left-handed.
yeah. Switch around.
Um,
I'm like that's just weird to me. Right?
yeah,
Same.
yeah. Also, like my check marks are right-handed people check marks. My mom, who was left-handed, did the left-handed people check marks, which were backwards or mirror
Yeah, no,
images of.
yeah. It's a pull instead of a push. I still do
Yeah,
the
yeah,
push
yeah.
anytime I can,
Which
because
makes sense because of, being left-handed, but I think it was
yeah,
like that conditioning. So, anywho.
yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, next question. iPhone or Android?
Oh, iPhone all day long, all day long. I make good tech money. I don't need a Walmart phone.
Love it, love it. Okay, next one. Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Um, Depends on what I'm doing. Windows is never the answer, but I have to use it if I'm gaming. Fortunately, I'm not a PC gamer. I use consoles. So pretty much Mac most of the time. But if I'm doing running a server or something like that, it's gonna be Linux.
Fair enough, fair enough. All right, next one. Favorite programming language?
Python.
Me too. I love
Oh
Python.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It
Okay,
used to be Perl, but then like Perl just gets really difficult to read after a while, and I don't have that kind of time anymore.
I've never done Perl, but like my job before the current one, they had a lot of Perl. And I'm like, damn.
Like I'm not
That's
gonna
a
lie,
lot of work.
Perl powered Web 1.0, right? If we're gonna be honest, like all the cool stuff was done in Perl. A little bit, like there are some other Johnny come lately languages that really got into like the later version of the web, but like your original like CGI bin stuff, like all the cool stuff, yeah,
Yeah.
all Perl. That
I
was all
remember
Perl. It was the
that.
Perl.
I never got into Perl, but I'm like, yeah, that's what I remember it from. I'm like, anyone doing the complex web stuff back in the day was like, it was Perl.
Yeah, it's all
That's
Perl.
cool. Okay, next question. Dev or ops?
Oh, ops all day long. Ops makes things happen. They're not. Look, here's my take on it, and it's gonna be spicy, and I don't care. But
That's
like
awesome.
devs are worried about being replaced by AI. Ops is not.
Interesting. Interesting. I feel like we need to dig into that one a little bit later.
Oh, we can. We can.
Very
I have
intrigued.
opinions.
Next one, JSON or YAML?
JSON.
All right.
Mhm.
Next one, do you prefer to consume content through video or text?
Ooh, depends on the content, right?
Mm,
Like I don't typically like video shorts, so I like little micro blogs. But anything of any substance, I like in video because like throw on a video essay and just kind of do whatever. Right? Like text is very text is fast. So if I want to consume it fast, it's text. If I want
yeah,
to, if
yeah.
it's going to be anything longer, it's going
Awesome.
to be video.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then final question. I just added this one on, which
Okay,
I actually
okay.
like to ask in interviews. What is your superpower?
Oh gosh. Ooh, that's a hard one. So my superpower is understanding people.
I think that
You
is
know,
a good superpower.
kind of digging in and getting behind the eyes a little bit on them and figuring out what's going on.
That makes a lot of sense, and I feel like it fits in with like the DevRel life because we have as much tech in our work as we do like the people side of things.
Yeah, yeah. Understanding not like I use this, but like, okay, but what are you really trying to do, right?
Yeah,
What
yeah,
is this thing trying to make you have? Like, what is keeping you up at night that this will keep you from keeping up at night? I guess maybe.
yeah. That makes a
But
lot of sense. Absolutely, and it's funny because it makes me think of like so many times at work where people will come to me and they're like, I need X. And then, so I think the gut reaction for a lot of people is like, okay, let's make that happen. But one thing that I've learned over the years is like, but why? Why do you need X? What are you actually trying to do?
yeah,
So that you
yeah.
have that extra bit of context because maybe you don't need X, maybe you need Y.
So I think the main problem that I've found in software development cycles is that we are so removed from what the customer actually needs and wants, right? Because you think about the customer, how many people that a customer talks to before you actually get to the thing where you're going to develop the thing that you think they're asking for, right?
Yeah.
You know, they're going to talk to a salesperson, they're going to talk to a CSM, they're going to talk to a TAM, they're going to talk to a DevRel, right? Maybe they talk to company leadership, right? That gets distilled down and fed to a product manager who's going to distill something down and feed it to a project manager who's going to make requirements that you as a developer are going to then try to, you know, accomplish, right? But you don't actually know what the customer is trying to do. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
without that context, you're flying in the dark. I've often said that development without context is just masturbation, right? Because you're doing the thing that you think is right. It makes me feel good, but I don't know if
Yeah. Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
know if it's accomplishing what the other person needs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely true. And it's interesting because I think like as much as I get annoyed by agile, I think it tries to like bridge that gap a little bit more by getting the right people talking to each other versus like the old ways of waterfall where like I worked at a bank for 11 years and it like the developers were so far removed from the business people. We had like the business people, then we had the business BAs, and then we had the technical BAs, and then we had the developers, and it's like, what the hell?
Honestly, though, I still feel like agile and like the sprint system still operates without a lot of context, right? Because we're taking
Yeah, yeah.
most of our cues from sales, if we're being honest, right?
True, true.
And that's why I think DevRel is really important because we're the ones that talk to the users and the customers and the community, right? And so the DevRel should be an engineering role more than anything else because we should be talking directly to product. Products should be talking to us. We should be talking to the engineers. We should be connecting engineers to the people. Like, yes, I love to go up there and give. Well, I don't love giving. I actually love talking. I love going there, being
Yeah,
on panels and stuff like that. But really, who should be at the booths is not DevRel folks. It shouldn't be salespeople. It should be the engineers who are working on the product and the product managers, stuff like that. They're the ones that should be talking to the community and to the customers and the users, not salespeople. Not your. I mean, yes, your DevRel folks also, but we're going to do that anyways, right? But
yeah,
if I
yeah,
want to make the most out of uh, an in-person function, right? I want the
yeah,
people who are building the things that we're selling interacting with the community as much as possible, not the people who are selling, right?
yeah, yeah,
Salespeople at a conference is really not it. It's not it. It's so yeah. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
It's like
I know what you mean.
you know when you walk down to like a big city and you go past a place and people are barking at you to buy this thing from the thing that you're really not interested in.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's what that is at a conference, and it's not
Oh my
cool.
god,
It's
that's
just
so true. It's so true. Yeah, and it's interesting because you seldom ever see at conferences like the engineers attending. Like every so often you will get that, but like especially like at a startup where everyone does everything, but like at the
yeah,
larger companies, you're absolutely right that you see mostly the devrels or the sales folks at the
yeah,
booths.
yeah. And so like we need to fix that. You know, like companies like, well, we can only send like however many people. I'm like, you can send more. You just don't want to.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure,
yeah.
right? And it's like you don't need to send salespeople, right? They're going to get the leads from the thing anyways, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's all well and
absolutely.
good. The leads that no one's going to respond to, right? Um, but but if you really want to take advantage of being in proximity to the people that use your products or who could potentially use your products, right? It's the people that build it.
Yeah, it's so true. And it like it makes a deeper connection because I remember like I've worked the booth before, doing the lead generation, like, oh, let me scan your badge. And it's like it's a very impersonal thing. And then when you have your badge scanned and then you go back to the office after a conference and you're getting all this
Gosh.
bullshit spam email and you're
Oh
like,
God,
oh
it's
my
the
God,
worst.
like just stop. Like it's irritating. I don't want to talk to you. I'm going to unsubscribe from your list ASAP. Like go
Or
away.
they give you the drip campaign, which
Oh,
I God. Hey, I know we just talked, like the 4 or 5 replies. I'm like, bro, I have not replied yet to you, so I don't
I
actually
know.
understand why
Yeah.
you keep
Yeah.
emailing me. It is just, but it's a sales thing. It's like this thing they teach you. Oh, you just keep reaching out. Like, no, man, I don't know why. I don't know why this became a thing. You know who I want to talk to? I don't want to talk to the salespeople, right? If you want to intrigue me on something, let me talk to the person who built it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. Talk to the real geeks out there.
Yeah. But so I think where we come off the rails in a lot of that development, like I said, is just we operate without context, or we think we did something great, this innovative thing, and then the customers are like, yeah, it's not that, I don't actually use that thing, it's not that great,
Yeah. Yeah.
or what's going to make the biggest impact. Like I would have much rather you did this, right? Because we prioritize a feature based on like sometimes a specific sale or 2 or 3 customers, right? Because it's big numbers like right away for these 2 or 3
Yeah.
customers, but you could have much bigger numbers if you met the needs of a lot of customers with a feature or with a fix, right? And then they grow in your product, right? I don't need to sell $1 million next quarter, what I need to do is I need to sell $20 million over the next 3 quarters,
Yeah, yeah, that's
right?
so very true. It's like I remember like I've worked with at previous jobs with vendors where they're obviously a small startup and we're obviously their big client, and so they're bending over backwards to get your business and like putting certain feature requests on hold for your feature request because you are the big screaming client,
Yeah,
and which ends up being a detriment to I think the
always,
product as a whole, right?
always, because you have that one customer you cannot lose,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And that is a growing pain because you have now stopped being a company and now you're a contractor.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're pretty much held hostage by this one client and you have to bend to their will, which is a
Yeah.
very uncomfortable place to be in.
and and so there is this kind of bravery, I would say, almost, that comes over. It's actually called leadership, that comes with saying like, hey, no, this is the vision, we're going to actually develop the product to meet the needs of these customers. If you want it, great, you can buy it, that's awesome. If you don't like it, right, I want to know why you don't like it, right? And then maybe
Yeah,
we can fix it. But also, I'm not gonna like bend over backwards just for you to the detriment of everything else,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Right. and that
Absolutely.
and so I think the weird part is that people are like, that there's this thing that you have to pursue this right now, we need this right now, we need this right now, and a lot of people are playing checkers and we need to be playing chess.
Yeah, I love the prop.
I don't know if this is going to be video or audio or not,
Oh,
but
it's going to be both actually, so
okay, perfect. So the people that watch this will enjoy the clack fan. I
I
don't
am so
actually.
happy you brought out the fan actually.
I actually have one that says shade on it, but I left that in the other room, so you just get the rainbow fan. But the point still stands.
Absolutely. But it's interesting on that same point. I think it also brings to mind this whole mentality, especially in corporations. And I think you see this the larger the corporation, where people stop having honest conversations with each other. Like you're so hell bent on like not disrupting the hierarchy and like, oh, you went over someone's head and or like people are afraid of owning up to their mistakes because of whatever, like, and so it makes it very hard to be productive.
There is this almost politician like copping out on accountability. No one
Yes.
ever wants to admit a mistake, or no one really wants to admit the true reason behind something, which is just I want to make money, right? Like
Exactly.
let's take HashiCorp for example, right? They come in here with this, oh, we're protecting open source, and by doing this and people doing this and not contributing, like, no, bro, you had an awful quarter and you're trying to make investors happy, right? You can just say that. I would
Yeah,
have
yeah,
much
yeah.
more appreciated that than feeding me copious amounts of bullshit about the open source community that you just hung out to dry,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And in the end, it's going to cost you in the long run. This was, I don't know about a career limiting decision, obviously, but it's certainly going to be a scope of influence limiting decision for HashiCorp over the long run, right? But they were thinking about this quarter and next quarter, right? And I'm sure it's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
make some investors are going to be like, okay, great, they're doing something great, but it's not going to be good in the long run. The community is already looking at this and going, all right, well, it's a mistake to rely on a single company for this. So let's either look for an open foundation or do we even need this at all? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and I think about it, like when Terraform first came out, right? There wasn't really a good strong API for interacting with a lot of the ways we consume hardware and infrastructure resources, right?
Hmm.
So Terraform is very useful to have something, as especially as an alternate to Puppet, right? Um,
Yeah.
because it was open source and much more usable and much more elastic, I guess, in those ways. You know, keeping state and being able to compare things like that, committing things to GitHub, et cetera, right? That's not the case anymore, right? You can have programmatic access to hardware and infrastructure provisioning APIs and health checks and, you know, state stores. You know, you have whether it's you know, you've got CDK and CloudFormation, AWS. Google's got whatever it's got. I'm sure Azure's got some vBasic scripts or something like that. You can. I'm kidding. I'm just throwing shade at Azure, but the thing you really have to ask is now, do we need to have another entire product for infrastructure as code, which is what it comes down to, or can we
Yeah.
now use the native tools and native APIs we have and store state somewhere else? The answer is yes. There are open source alternatives to doing exactly that, and we were never really forced to examine our need for it till Terraform said, "Aha, we're going to change the license," right? And then now people can just decide to make you irrelevant,
Yeah. Yeah.
which never would have happened if they had done this. People were just happy on like, okay, cool, we'll keep using Terraform because there's no reason to examine it. Now they have it.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true. It's interesting because like Hashi fans are like there are hardcore Hashi fans out there, and I do feel like it alienates a lot of them.
It does, and I think the interesting part is that the people who are Hashi fans, it's like now, are you? Where is your allegiance? Is your allegiance to
Yes,
like the company or the product? And those are two
yes,
different
yes,
things now, right? Or now,
absolutely.
or they were two different things, and now they're the same.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely brings that more to the forefront as a result.
Right. You know, and like, you know, you got a lot of discourse in there, you know, especially people like Kelsey who are saying like, you know, really talking about like, what is it open source? What does it mean to have open source maintenance, or how do companies, large corporations with, you know, capitalistic interests, how, you know, what influence do they really have on these things, or how should they be allowed to participate in these open source projects in ways that don't hurt the community, right? Um, and so, you know, you really do have to kind of ask, it's like, what do we as a community of practitioners and users and influencers and decision makers and things like that, like, what are we going to do to really um, change this going forward, right? And we do have the ability to influence that. We can change that. It's just a matter of, we're going to dedicate the time and energy to it, or are we going
Yeah,
to abstract it away like we tend to want to do with everything else?
yeah, 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 absolutely. Or it could be that someone gets like pissed off enough, and then what was the I want to say there was like MySQL that they closed sourced, and then they forked it off to an open source version.
Yeah,
Am I getting
when
that right?
no, that was right. Oracle got it and did all that, and then, well, the first it was like when MariaDB first came out, right? Same thing. It was
Yeah,
just a fork of MySQL, right?
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
look at the same thing with Java, right?
Yes,
Um, you know, whenever a company's been like, okay, cool, we're going to commercialize this thing, and the open source community's like, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to do
yeah,
that. Before this, it was with Elastic and Amazon with
Oh yeah, that's right.
with OpenSearch, which I really think. Now, I'm going to be honest. Like I know the inside tea because I used to work for Elastic, and I've heard Shay talk at great length. Sometimes about like kind of what his view on that was, and I just companies owning an open source product is an oxymoron, right?
Yeah,
Open source, the community owns it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And if
absolutely, absolutely.
if you want to dip into that well to make some money, that's fine. Everyone else can too, right? If a
Yeah,
company owns it, it's not open source.
yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, they have the ultimate control over it in
Yeah,
the end, right?
yeah. And we're seeing that over and over again. It's like companies, instead of going through and developing products and services around this product that make people want to spend money on it, right? They're seeing competition, getting upset, and they're trying to stifle competition rather than just getting better at it, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. It's interesting because it makes me think of like open telemetry, which is open source, and before in the observability world, like everyone had their own like tracing implementation, right? And then open telemetry is like, no, 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 let's standardize it, right?
Yeah,
um and it so now it's like, and the cool thing about it is like all of the major observability vendors are like fully supporting it, and so like you have like the community coming together to support this thing. And so what differentiates the vendors is not their proprietary SDKs, it's how do they render the data. So it changes the conversation, which I think is like
yeah,
really cool.
and that's the way it should be, right? Um, I want to choose a company that offers this service based on the quality of the service, right? Whether it's faster, whether it's more reliable, whether I get better support. If I've got these people that do like, hey, I used to work as a MongoDB as a service provider, right? And we competed directly with MongoDB Atlas. We competed with with AWS to some extent, things like that. I was like,
Mhm.
we were just better at it. That was all it was. We were just better at it,
Yeah,
right? And that was fine. Like, but the other thing too is like, better at it, does that mean that we have enough? Are we essentially like a lifestyle business, or are we trying to make billions according to the market, blah, blah, blah? And so I think that's too, it's like, what is that? What is your end goal? Like, I was just thinking, well, you have to be the biggest and baddest thing. It's like that late stage capitalism thing. I'm like, no, I'm cool with only owning like 20% of the market. I'm cool with only owning 10% of the market. As long as me and all my employees get paid, right? And customers happy, and
yeah,
we do kind of like organic growth, that's fine. Like, I don't understand whatever happened to just like kind of growing normally and organically, that being okay, right? We make a
yeah,
profit, people get paid, people can go on vacations. Everyone should be, I don't understand why that was never good enough, right? Or
yeah.
was good enough and now it's not. But what you end up happening is you have like a crush and a grind to get some stuff out, some innovation happens, and as soon as people start trying to return money to investors or go to IPO, now it's the same standard playbook. Like everyone does, like, okay, great. Now we're gonna like do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, and you see it over and over again. And so all the promise that you see behind a company or a product that gets you excited, you already know that the shoe's going to drop and it's going to get short lived, and now they're going to add like they're going to ruin it. It's like, uh,
Yeah,
do you remember Winamp?
yeah, I do.
Right, Winamp was great, right? Winamp, I think
Hmm.
was like
It was
2.54
the
or something like that.
thing.
Really, it was so amazing. And you know what
Yeah, yeah.
happened to? Do you know what happened to Winamp?
I don't know.
They got bought by AOL,
Oh.
and AOL ruined Winamp.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was awful. I will never forgive them for that. They ruined Winamp. Like, it will
Oh,
never.
geez.
Yeah. Do you remember ICQ?
Yeah, absolutely.
ICQ is great. It is still to this day my favorite messaging platform. You know what happened to ICQ?
I don't know.
They got bought by AOL, and
Get out of town. I did not know
AOL
that.
ruined. Yeah, AOL ruined ICQ. Right? Do
Oh,
do
man.
do we see this trend like what's
Your
happening? So
pattern.
like when we talk about this thing of like we're going to buy this thing and then stop. Do you remember HipChat?
Yeah, yeah, I vaguely remember it. I never
And it
used
was
it, but I
kind of cool. It's
do
kind of
remember it.
fun.
Yeah,
And then it
yeah.
got bought. I think it was either Slack bought it from
Oh.
Atlassian and then
Oh,
shut it
interesting.
down.
Oh,
Right.
shoot.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
And so, like, when we start seeing this kind of thing where we're like, oh, well, we don't actually want to build a better product, right? We want
Yeah.
to eliminate people's ability to choose between products, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so we don't want to actually have to compete because that's too expensive,
Yeah,
right?
so it's just cheaper to buy them out
And
and
then
then
not
buy
have
it.
to make something better, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so like that kind of thing is like I don't like that. Like let the community decide. Like if your product is better, great, people will use it, they'll buy it, right? Or if there's more of a compelling reason for them to use it, if it's less expensive, if its service is better, if it's just more available, whatever it is, right? That let people choose that, right?
Yeah,
Don't
absolutely.
don't kill the competition with a pen and lawyers. Kill the competition by building a better product.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree.
But
Yeah, it makes me think of like Oracle as well. Like I
oh,
spent many years as a Java developer, and so in my Java days, like the Java app server, my favorite one was like BA WebLogic, and I think Oracle bought them and it was like
so many things that we enjoyed have been ruined by acquisition, right?
yeah,
Um,
it's super sad.
and so like it's so when we see this trend continuing through stuff that was used and or beloved by the open source community, it's just it's just more things like we can't trust corporate interests to have our best interests in mind because they
Yeah,
don't, right?
yeah.
Like what's good for the corporation is almost never good for the customer.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah, I feel the same way. I think that's one of the things that frustrated me when I started working was realizing like the world is a lot more nefarious than I would
Oh,
like it to be. I'm like, why can't we all just be friends?
but I think what's worse than that is that there's also the narrative by some straight white dudes on Twitter who are like, oh well, you're a highly paid capitalist person, you can't be against capitalism. I'm like, just because I just because I detest the system doesn't mean that I'm not good at it, right? Matter of
Yeah,
fact, because I'm good at it is why I detest it, right? I'm coming from a place where I know how it works and I know how to make it work for me, and it's terrible. It shouldn't
yeah,
happen, right?
yeah,
Like that's not hypocrisy. That's understanding.
yeah. True, true. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
But I'm not going to mention any names who it is. They know who they are, and they're probably listening to this.
Now, pivoting, I want to pivot back to like a thing that you said earlier when we were talking, when we were doing the rapid fire questions, the dev versus
Yeah.
ops.
Hmm.
You said you had opinions, so I want to hear them.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? There was been this long, like probably a good 10 years worth, if not longer, but I know for 10 years at least, move to like minimize the role of ops in what we do for software and product delivery, right?
Yeah,
There's DevOps, a lot of folks, and they're wrong by thinking this, but a lot of folks think like, oh, it's when dev people do ops or ops things gets automated, right? That's not what DevOps is, right?
yeah, yeah.
Remember the no ops push for a
Oh
while? Like,
God,
oh, we don't need ops.
it's like no code. Like, yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. Like
No.
what they're saying is, oh, we're abstracting the work of operations away so that devs don't have to be concerned with it, so that they can just do on development. And a lot of developers think that the sun rises and sets by whatever they type out of their fingers, and it doesn't. Right. The reality is that developers are a skill. Don't get me wrong; it's skilled and very difficult. Not very difficult because it's not like any of us are doing brain surgery, right? It is a skilled and it is a highly complex like skill set, right? But it
Yeah.
is only a piece in the cog,
Yes.
right? And developers are not rock stars, right? They're not. I don't care. The notion of a 10x developer is bullshit, right? You can have all the developers in the world you want to, and you're just going to be developing. You're going to be running stuff on your own laptop if it's not for operations,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Everything happens because of operations, right?
Yep.
And we rely on each other. Like operations need developers to write software for them. They need developers to write drivers. They need developers to write firmware. Like all that kind of has stuff like APIs, stuff like that. Also has to work. But when you need stuff to work and you want to make money, it's your operations and support teams that actually do that, right? Developers will get you sales, operations will get you renewals.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
You know, and what does any business want more than sales? They want renewal. But I think where we come off the rails in a lot of this is like, what are our roles? We're developer relations roles, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
work for a hardware manufacturer. We don't, I should be talking to operations, right? If you do any kind of like uh, um, API for hardware, like stuff like that, like you should be talking to operations folks, right? Unless you're selling specific developer tools,
yeah.
right? Then you should be talking to devs. If you're selling things that people consume in their operations, especially anything around infrastructure or networking and stuff like that, you should probably be talking to operations too, right? But we focus on developers, especially when it comes to salaries and stuff like that, because we're thinking, oh, well, operations can be obfuscated away and do this and this and this and this, right? But the
Hmm.
operations knowledge gets more and more complex. Like how many ops folks
Yeah,
like when people talk about using Kubernetes, right? As we abstract away more stuff, or like platform engineers, stuff like that, they're just operations folks, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, we're
Absolutely.
we're we're providing a platform for developers to use because we do not want them interacting with the hardware.
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and so
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
and as so there's this they change the name for operations over and over again, right? Because they don't
So
want to
true.
just come out and say like, hey, now these are ops folks.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and it makes me think of something. And to your point, like operations folks have been tasked with learning more and more and more stuff, right? Like picking up
Yeah,
managing Kubernetes clusters and learning these IAC tools and like
and
you know,
managing Docker repositories and then
yeah,
managing CI/CD tools and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah,
People
yeah,
who are called DevOps engineers, they're just ops folks,
yep,
but they're not
yep,
working. But they're working on the internal tooling, right? That's
yep,
all it is, right?
yeah,
But it's funny
exactly.
because like really ideally in the pie in the sky world, the very last concern that a dev is going to have is like, okay, I'm now going to package this thing up. That's where it should end. And maybe not even that. I'm just going to commit it to main, right? I'm going to commit it to the production repo. That's where I want you to stop, right? Cool.
Mhm.
We've got it the rest of the way, right? Once it gets committed to the production repo, everything else is operations at that point,
Yeah, yeah, fair
right?
enough.
And that's kind of how it should be. I don't want the developers to have to work, and not that they can't. I just don't want them to have to. I want you to just go back to developing, fixing bugs, developing features. Right? Operations has the rest.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Now, do you think though that it's helpful to have that mutual empathy for like what each of these roles entails, right? Because I do feel like maybe there is this us versus them mentality with devs versus ops, and I've been on both sides of it, and
Yeah.
I feel like especially when it comes to like developers are done developing their feature, throw it over the wall, it's gone into production, that's it, and now there is a bug that arises and it's like not my problem.
So I think that's the whole thing that DevOps is supposed to be solving, right? The
Yeah,
throw to the wall,
supposed to
the
be.
silent isolation. It is supposed to be solving like they turn it into all these other things, and it's not.
Yeah,
DevOps
yeah,
is a culture, right? A
yeah, yeah,
culture
absolutely.
of collaboration, interoperation, right? Where like where ops has these levels, concerns, and the roles and things they got to do. Great. It should be informed by what devs do. Devs should be informed by what ops do. Ops should be able to say like, hey, these are the things we found. Has this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. So you need to work that into your dev cycle to get these things fixed because these are not operations issues. These are like software bugs or whatever, right? Cool, that's great. Dev should be able to say like, hey, it's supposed to do this and this and this and this. So when you're designing when architecture reviews stuff like that, you have to make sure this and this. Like it is going to rely heavy on this caching thing. So you have to make sure it's robust. Like those are the things that ops folks should be concerned about with that, right? I think what ends up happening, and this is just my observation as an ops person, that dev has very little knowledge or concern about what happens in ops,
Yeah,
right? But
exactly,
ops
exactly.
by the nature of the role has to be concerned about the code that's coming out that they have to deploy, right?
Yeah,
Um, and I think to the extent where devs do not concern themselves with ops and they think that the whole world revolves around them, right? That poisons the culture,
yeah,
right?
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
then you end up developing kind of practices around that notion where dev is the most important thing, right? But the customers don't interact with the devs.
No, they
The
don't.
customers interact with ops.
Yeah, yeah,
And that goes back to what I said before about, customer driven development and like having context for the things you do, right?
yeah, absolutely.
But but in the end, I think what's so interesting about that is that there's we have to have this kind of cultural coming to Jesus moment, but also that's an organizational thing because not all organizations are like that, but
Yeah,
a lot of them have come that way, and that's where leadership comes in, right? But we're not
yeah,
doing
yeah,
leadership; we're doing management. Those aren't the same thing.
yeah. And that's where I think having those honest conversations that so many organizations lack becomes a problem as well, right? You've got people not wanting to admit when there's a problem, people being like basically creating their own kingdoms and wanting to protect their own kingdoms and not
Oh yeah,
thinking outside the kingdom. And so you launch into those socio-technical issues that plague so many organizations. I definitely see that a lot in big organizations, but it doesn't mean that the small organizations aren't immune to them either. I mean, that can easily happen.
I think that's kind of what you're talking about. It's like you talk about how do we do these things. How do we like how do you we've created so much tooling and so many products so that we don't actually have to talk one with another, right?
Yes.
So that we try to automate, not even automate empathy. We just kind of like, oh, we don't need emotions or empathy about this because it's not about the people about this. So it's like Slack. Why do we have Slack? Because we don't really want to talk to people. We want to be able to chat with them, right? Why do
Yeah.
we have GitHub issues where we interact with people like over text? But a lot of times too, if you just like, not that you can't do this in remote culture, but just like we're doing, like, hey man, let's pop into a Zoom meeting for 5 minutes and we'll talk about this thing. Great, all done,
Yeah.
right? And yes, I understand in large distributed teams where asynchronous communication is very, very important. You have to be able to communicate that way to collaborate, and that's fine. But you understand it's going to be slower, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you want to quickly, let's have a conversation. We can understand each other, have some, and then I can understand your side better, or what your not even your side. I can understand what your concerns are better, right?
Yeah.
And have context for why you're saying the things that you're saying, or why you have the concerns that you have, and now they can become my concerns, or I can address
Yeah.
the concerns that you have, right, a little bit better, right? But we have so many tools that we don't, so that we don't have to do that.
Yeah, so true. And I think part of it too is people are afraid of confrontation. Like it's easy to hide behind a chat window, right? But as soon as you're face to face with someone, it's easier to hate someone or what they're doing behind the chat window, and then the face to face is like, there's
Well,
a
I think it's
person.
weird that because some people rely on other people like that. The stereotype of that one asshole engineer that always makes it hard for everybody else. It's a stereotype because it was very often true in a lot of orgs, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That they're relying on getting their way because people don't want to like have arguments or confrontation or whatever, right? And it doesn't have to be about that. It's be like, hey man, you actually don't have that much power, right? So so we're gonna like you can argue about all you want to, but once we go for this peer review, like in that way, it's good,
yeah,
right? Because but at the same time, it's like if you have to do that just to deal with this one person, how about we just get rid of that one person who doesn't know how to be empathetic and work on a team? Doesn't matter how good he codes if we have to implement all these things just for this one person. Like,
yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
you should have organizational fixes, but also you can get rid of toxic people in your org.
Yeah, yeah, and that's an interesting point because I think there's this mentality in a lot of teams where like, oh, but this person is a superstar, we can't possibly get rid of them, but they're
Yeah, but
fucking with the team's mojo,
yeah,
and that that can be worse than having this superstar who knows their shit and fixes things and blah blah blah, because now you're like affecting the morale of your other folks, and then that can create like tension, infighting, whatever, right?
yeah, yeah.
um
And we see this, like, I'm going to draw a parallel to sports teams. You've seen sports teams that have one superstar player and the rest of the team is garbage,
mhm.
right? And, or even if they're not garbage, that one superstar player is a problem and it causes
Yeah,
discord on the team, right? They're a problem in the
absolutely.
locker room. They're a problem with this whole thing. They get so much attention, negative attention, right? That the rest of
Yeah,
the team falls apart. And as soon as they get rid of that one person, they're great. right?
Yeah.
But you can have a superstar player that makes other people around them better, right? You look
Yeah,
at like Michael
absolutely.
Jordan, right? One of the great examples. Like, was he a jerk? Yeah. Was he good? Yeah. But did he make other people around him better? Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
And like that's what you want, right? You don't want to have somebody who's just, well, this person knows this one technology really, really great. You know what? I can deal without that. I don't have to have that, right? If you
Yeah.
have to have that, yeah, that's a business failure. That's a leadership failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Failureship. It's a leadership failure.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it all boils down to like just focusing on the human aspect of like we are humans working with other humans, and we should not forget that. Like we do not work with robots, not yet.
We
Maybe
work on
someday,
robots.
but sorry,
So we work on robots, right?
we work on robots. Exactly, perfect. Yeah,
But technology is inherently still about people. Like we people consume it, people need it, they have needs that they want to address, right? We're basically using these things to solve problems, right? But again,
yeah,
technology for the sake of technology is just masturbation, right? We need to
yeah,
be able to have interoperation as a team. We are software engineering teams, we are operations teams, we are company as a team, not a family, right? We're a
yeah,
team,
yeah.
right? And so we
Absolutely,
have
absolutely.
to interoperate. And it's so funny because if you think, I'm going to go back to like a sports reference, like for those it's like everyone on the, a lot of people will make fun of the kicker, right? Until that kicker needs to save the game, right? And then all of a sudden the kicker is the hero, right?
Yeah,
There are
yeah,
no unimportant parts of a team, right? Like,
yeah.
like people like, who's the long snapper? People know who the star quarterback is, but they don't know who the long snapper is. But the long snapper can lose a game for you. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and that's an important thing to remember. Like, the team exists with all the people in it. It's not all about one person. And
Everybody on that team is necessary and important,
yeah,
whether
yeah,
or not they are rock stars.
yeah, yeah. And then you can extend that beyond like just a single team, and talk about like the interoperability of various teams in an organization. Like
We're about to have some fucking tea right here, my friend. Do you know? Do you know how sick I am of? It's mostly developers. So I'm going to go back to that again, who are very self-righteous and very degrading to people who are quote unquote non-tech roles, like HR, like sales, like customer success, like all these things like that. Like, yo, they are why you are here. You have a job because of them. Like I can't. I may not agree with having sales pressures, but I do not. I will never like say like we don't need salespeople, right? Because somebody's got to talk to these people because you can't. Like you're not
yeah,
good at that. That's not what you got.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
not
That's
your
so
role,
true.
right?
That is so true.
Like you need to be understand like some of these pressures. You need to be able to interface with people in various roles and like really go out there and put yourself out on the line, right? You have to be able to make sure that we all get paid. You have to make sure that we all have insurance. You have to make sure that we get people in here hired. You have to make sure that your video conferencing stuff works, that your laptop works. Like all these things are not. No, we don't have anybody that. We're not going to say not anybody. For the most part, people are working there because their role is necessary,
Yep,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. Things don't happen
And
by magic and fairies.
right. And so like when people say, oh, well, the rock star type is like, bro, you know what? I've had rock star office managers that they paid six figures and absolutely they were worth every penny because they made
Yeah,
this stuff happen. Right.
yeah, yeah,
I had rock star recruiters like, yeah, like everybody at a company, their role should be important and should be
yeah,
necessary.
yeah,
Right. Even if
yeah,
they're the long
absolutely.
snapper or the punter, you know?
Yeah, totally. I love that so much. Well, we are coming up on time, but before we finish off, and you've given us so many awesome hot takes, but do you have any final hot takes to impart,
Um,
or
the
pieces of
final
advice?
I said honestly, the final hot take and piece of advice that I want to impart is to stop having sales driven development. Right. We talked about resume driven development. Like we make things overly complex and complicated just because someone's, and we shouldn't have that. But we also shouldn't have development based around a sales quota or based around like anything like that. Like, no, man, make the product good.
Yeah,
And
make the
then,
product something that people want to use.
right. And then we'll get it sold. Right. But
Totally.
don't go chasing waterfalls. Just put your
I love
rivers
it.
in the lakes that you used to.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Tim, so much for geeking out with me today. And y'all don't
My
forget to
pleasure.
subscribe and be sure to check out the show notes for additional resources and to connect with us and our guests on social media. Until next time,
Peace out and geek out.
Geeking Out is hosted and produced by me, Adriana Vilela. I also compose and perform the theme music on my trusty clarinet. Geeking Out is also produced by my daughter, Hannah Maxwell, who incidentally designed all of the cool graphics. Be sure to follow us on all the socials by going to bento.me/geeking